Russ Porter, Bryant Gumbel, and Boyd Matson have been covering sports in 1974. Bryant Gumbel ends the year with a slight touch of flu and couldn't be with us this evening. Ross, how would you describe sports 1974?
Jess, I'd say that 1974 was the year of the near miss in Los Angeles sports.
It seemed that every team here, from baseball to basketball, was getting into the playoffs, but unfortunately, once there, they could not win. However, for a couple of individuals, they had everything come their way.
Steve Garvey was the National League's most valuable player, and the Dodgers were almost wire-to-wire winners in the Western Division. The team had acquired Jim Wynn and Mike Marshall in off-season trades. Marshall appeared in a record 106 games as a relief pitcher, en route to the Cy Young Award. Andy Messersmith won 20, Don Sutton 19, and the Dodgers led by as many as 11 games and as few as 1.5. When it was over, Los Angeles had 102 victories and beat Cincinnati by 4 games. Garvey and Wynn each drove in over 100 runs. In the National League playoffs, the Dodgers swept the first 2 games in Pittsburgh, lost the third here, and then blasted the Pirates 12-1 in Game 4. That put Walt Alston's club in the World Series for the first time in 8 years. Oakland's Athletics, though, were able to turn back the Dodgers in 5 games, 4 of which ended 3-2. One of the LA highlights came in Game 1 when Joe Ferguson made a perfect throw from right field to retire Sal Bando at the plate. Another came in the second game when Marshall picked pinch runner Herb Washington off first base in the 9th inning to preserve the Dodgers' only victory of the World Series. For the Rams, a close call, too. One afternoon in October, 9 months after he was named NFC Player of the Year, John Hadle ambled onto the Coliseum turf as a reserve quarterback. Hadle called a handful of plays, threw an incomplete pass, trotted off, and 24 hours later was traded to Green Bay for 5 high draft choices. The man who replaced Hadle in the 6th week of the schedule, James Harris, was on the spot. But the former Grambling quarterback directed the Rams to 8 wins in their next 11 games, a divisional crown, and a playoff victory over Washington, the club's first in 23 years. An illegal procedure penalty at the Viking 1 cost the Rams a near-certain touchdown. Harris then threw an interception, one of numerous mistakes, which cost Los Angeles a trip to the Super Bowl. In college football, USC survived an opening loss to Arkansas and a tie with California and downed 9 other opponents. A 34-9 decision over UCLA clinched the Pacific 8 title for the Trojans, who qualified for the Rose Bowl for the 7th time in 9 years. UCLA finished 6-3-2 under new coach Dick Vermeil. Anthony Davis finished runner-up in the Heisman Trophy balloting, but his 100-yard kickoff return ignited a second-half rally against Notre Dame. Trailing 24-0 at one time, SC erupted for the game's final 55 points.
Most collegiate basketball teams would have been delighted with a 26-4 record, but for perennial national champions UCLA, it was a disappointment. It was also the end of their string of national titles, and their end of straight victories at 88, and the end of the collegiate days for seniors Bill Walton and Keith Wilkes. The Bruins did have one starter returning. He is Dave Myers, and around him they are building for a return to the top. And thus far they are successful, being undefeated at this point. Another team losing the heart of its squad was the Los Angeles Lakers when Jerry West, seen in action here last year, decided he could no longer play at the level of excellence he demanded. The Lakers have not been as fortunate as UCLA since the day in the preseason this year West made his emotional retirement announcement.
I think that that when you set standards for yourself and when you are willing to sacrifice some of those standards, then you're not being very honest with yourself. And I know myself that I didn't want to sacrifice those standards.
The other resident of the Forum, the Los Angeles Kings, are finding things much more pleasant, starting with a third-place finish last year and their first trip to the playoffs. The key to their success being 2 trades with the New York Rangers. They brought Mike Murphy, Tom Williams, Sheldon Kennegeezer, and Gene Carr to L.A. This year, the Kings are actually battling for first place in their division with Montreal. And the big addition this season, the goaltending of Rogie Vachon. 1974 was the year women in sports made gigantic strides in catching up. There are now varsity women athletes in high schools. New funding rules at colleges and universities are now giving women a more equal share of the sports spending dollar. In pro tennis, it's now just about equal pay for equal wins. On the women's pro golfing tour, numero uno won 100 grand this past year. Even the men's training room is no longer a sacred cow. At USC, Ellen Collins has equal billing and duties as athletic trainer.
Well, so much for 1974. Now we go to 1975, and let's talk about the Dodgers, first of all, Boyd. I think the ball club still has to have another good starting pitcher.
I think so. They had an injury last year to Tommy John, and they're very uncertain as to how he is going to come back. And Andy Messersmith tapered off a bit at the end of the year. They could use another pitcher.
A lot of people don't realize it, but there's still one more interleague trading period, and that's in March, and I think the Dodgers might make a deal then. As far as the Angels are concerned,
they need a lot of help.
Yes, they do, and I think the thing they need most of all is some good power hitters, don't you?
I think that would be helpful. Of course, they got Dick Williams, who came in the middle of the year, and he feels that having the whole offseason to look at the team, he can bring them back with some improvement.
There was a lot of talk that Nolan Ryan would be traded, but I don't think they're going to make that deal.
It doesn't look like it. They couldn't get enough in return, I don't think.
A lot of talk also around town these days concerning the Rams and Joe Namath. Do you think he might come here?
Chances are good now, especially in light of that judge's ruling in regards to the Joe Cap case, that they can sign anybody who is a free agent without having to give up some unknown quantity. And they need some quarterbacking help, even though James Harris did do a good job this season.
I think they're high on Harris. I thought Harris did a pretty good job, and I think Ron Jaworski's got a lot of potential, too. As far as the draft is concerned, which is coming up later this month, it looks to me as if they're going to have, first of all, they'll tell you they're going to go for the quality athlete. That's always the first line.
That's the standard line.
We want to get the best athlete available. But I think they're going to have to improve that secondary, and with Schiavelli and Iman and Cowan all having 14 years in the league behind them, they've got to look to the future, and I think get some young interior offensive line.
Yeah, the offensive line, they need some help. They certainly don't need more running backs or linebackers. They're very strong at that position.
The World Football League is in a lot of trouble, I'd say.
Did you catch them last year?
No, I wasn't able to go to any of the games because I was working every time they played.
You're probably not going to get another chance, Ross. I think that may be it. Last year was your chance.
UCLA, as you pointed out in the film, toppled off after 9 championships in 10 years. Is this the year that USC might even dethrone them as the Pac-8 winner?
They may not come back not only as national champions, but even in the Pac-8.
And as for the Kings, they've had a tremendous start. I don't think any true hockey observer really believes that they're going to beat Montreal down the stretch. But it looks to me as if this is the year that they're a good second-place finisher and a probable playoff participant for sure.
They have been amazing thus far in the season. People all around the league are standing back and looking and saying, what is going on? Why the change? And, of course, Rogie Vachon, as we mentioned, is one of the key elements in that.
Okay, Boyd, we'll look forward to 1975, and Jess, I know you will too.
Thank you, Ross. Actually, you've admitted one sports item, at least Boyd has. Boyd, who puts the NBC peacock to shame where plumage is concerned, recently exercised his fashion fetish buying a pair of sneakers. Admittedly, it isn't what it once was when the choice was between black or white, high top or low cut.
Now, not only does a person have to choose from a multitude of brands with dozens of models each, but they also have to color coordinate the shoes with their outfits and decide on the proper accent areas with stripes, wings, emblems, designs, autographs on the side, color highlights on the side, the back, the bottom, the insides, materials of suede, canvas, leather, nylon, and your choice of designs on the sole. Almost anything you could want on your tennis shoe is now available, which means for those like myself, buying a pair of sneakers is an all-day affair, trying to just get the right combination of all the ingredients. And when the choice is finally made, it suddenly reminds me, I could never make up my mind as a kid.
most sensational crime was the bizarre kidnapping of Patty Hearst. Soon after they abducted her, the Symbionese Liberation Army said she might be gone 5 weeks. It's been nearly a year. Holding Patty as hostage, the SLA used the media to market its revolutionary rhetoric. Her anxious family paid ransom in the form of a massive free food giveaway, People in Need. But when release appeared near, Patty became Tanya.
I wasn't given the choice of one, being released in a safe area, or two, joining the forces of the Symbionese Liberation Army and fighting for my freedom and the freedom of all oppressed people. I have chosen to stay and fight.
She was seen in a San Francisco bank robbery April 15th and toting a gun at an Inglewood sporting goods store a month later. The search for Patty and the SLA finally led police and FBI to 54th and Compton, Friday night, May 17th. Six SLA members perished in the gun battle and fire. Patty Hearst was still missing. The Hearst family has taken back their $50,000 reward and is moving from Hillsborough, where they say the vigil has been too painful. The FBI still wants Patty on criminal charges. She's been reported seen from Canada to South America, in Hollywood, Cleveland, Newhall, and Nashville. But she hasn't come home.
Looking back on the local crime scene for 1974 gives us no small reason for concern. The Sla Shootout was just one of the times the Los Angeles crime scene made national news headlines in 1974. The nation watched in horror this summer as 3 people died and 35 others were injured at the LA airport, the result of the work of the so-called alphabet bomber. Just recently, we've watched the unfolding of a scheme to loot the LA Treasury of more than $2.5 million in bogus checks. And we've seen the 4th in a series of brutal Skid Row murders. But law enforcement officers tell us there's still less crime committed here than in most major cities. Latest FBI figures show that crime is up 16% across the nation, but it's only up a little over 2% here in Los Angeles. And this was the first time in 2 years that there was an increase here. The rise is attributed primarily to an increase in grand thefts. That includes any thefts over $200. Homicides, aggravated assaults, auto and petty thefts were all up. Reported rapes were down. But that will probably be changing now with the enactment of the Robbins rape law, which provides for better treatment of rape victims. With all this, local officers feel that their biggest problem this year has been juvenile crime. What will 1975 be like?
We see a continuation of juvenile violence. Hopefully we'll bring some of that under control. If Chief Davis has his say, a great deal of that will be brought under control. We look for a year of possible civil strife due to depression and the combination of depression and inflation, the problems that exist there. We look for a year that may bring an upsweep in crime in the suburbs. That seems to be the direction which crime is moving. Other than that, we see a year that is going to be difficult for everyone. Not as much money for the operation of a police department, the operation of government, but I think it's a year that may bring us all together, where we have to work together to solve our problems.
Juvenile crime put the probation department in the spotlight in 1974, and that department's problems continue even now, as Mike Gavin reports.
The probation department supervises 65,000 adult and juvenile offenders. It's supposed to protect the community and at the same time rehabilitate criminals within that community. Critics of the department, mostly law enforcement people, claimed the pendulum had swung too far in favor of the criminal. In May of 1974, Chief Probation Officer Kenneth Kirkpatrick disagreed.
We know that if we can keep persons in the community, they have about 7 out of 10 chances of making it. This is about a ratio of success. If they go to prison, they have about 3 out of 10 chances. If they go to a state correctional school for youths, they have approximately 5 out of 10 chances, so that we are more successful where we can keep people safely in local community programs.
Law enforcement people blamed the probation department for turning county jails like this one into county penitentiaries. They said the state was paying the probation departments to be soft on crime. They were referring to something called the Probation Subsidy Program, through which the state paid probation departments about $4,000 for each convicted felon who did not go to state prison. In Los Angeles County, that meant more than 60% of the convicted murderers, rapists, armed robbers, and burglars. They were going on probation, many of them spending time here in the county jail as a condition of that probation. Chief Probation Officer Kirkpatrick denied that his department was influenced by the $9 million in state subsidies it got last year, and denied that violent criminals were being returned to the community. He said the big increase in the use of probation was in drug-related offenses. The supervisors sided with law enforcement, calling for tougher probation policies. Kirkpatrick was fired from his job on November 19th. But his firing didn't slow the attack by law enforcement people. In December, DA Joe Bush appeared before the board and called for new laws to permit his department to overrule the probation department in cases involving juveniles.
Can you imagine that there's nothing in the juvenile law that says there's a sense of responsibility or that punishment is its philosophy? It is not part of the law. Now, that's a very important thing. You're talking about punishment. Well, our judges, and I'm not critical of the judges, they must follow the law. And the law says this is a rehabilitative process, and I think the law is an ass.
The incident that brought Bush before the board was the quick release of 124 students who were arrested for pushing drugs on 24 Los Angeles high school campuses. Everyone was upset by the fact they were released so quickly from custody. Everyone, that is, except the kids themselves. The evidence collected was put on display in such a fashion as to indicate a link between marijuana use and violence on campus. So far, nobody's said such a link exists. That may be one of the things we have to look forward to in '75.
We'll conclude right after this.
The Great Western feeling. At Great Western Savings, you get the strength of assets over $4.5 billion, and so much more. You get the feeling that comes from knowing you put your savings in exactly the right place. That's the Great Western feeling.
My mama says you can do whole bunches of stuff here at Lion Country Safari. She says you can ride on an elephant and pedal a hippopotamus boat and count a zebra stripe and drive a zebra jeep and see lots of wild animals and count a zebra stripes and see a kissing bird and ride a jungle boat. My mama knows everything there is about Zebra Country Safari. Right, Mama?
Did you wash behind your hoofs?
Drive through and see 20 young lions in our new Cub Country section.
Really, darlings, we moved just everything for you all day, so your evenings will be more delightful at Los Alamitos.
The world's fastest horses and 4 Exactas nightly.
Night racing now Monday through Saturdays. Los Alamitos, first race 7:45, 4 Exactas nightly.
Hello, I'm Herb Hawkins. We will sell your house or buy it for cash. Call our nearest office for a free estimate. Herbert Hawkins sells houses.
Trouble getting you down? Help is as near as your telephone. Call info 785-8861 to discuss your problems. You will be referred to the agency nearest you that can help you. Info's referral service is free and confidential.
It is the nature of news to often deal with negatives. We've been much criticized in recent years for that. But if we're to deal with the problems that plagued us in 1974, we must be aware of them. 1975 can be a hopeful year, but only if we recognize some of those problems and if we're willing to work to solve them. What are the lessons? Watergate has surely taught us that we must maintain the openness in our society, The energy crisis serves to warn us about our wastefulness and our singular dependence on one major energy source. Growing unemployment reminds us how delicate our economic system can be and how cautiously we must approach any major tampering with it. But most of all, the plight of people, the poor, the unrepresented, the elderly, and all who must struggle, reminds us of our humanity. And it is that quality we expect to make 1975 a brighter year. Thanks for watching, and good night.
Will begin 1/2 hour from now.